Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third in our detail series when we explore this year's RIAS Award winners. So today, delighted to be joined by Cristobal from Payton Park Architects, who will discuss the Campus Central at the University of Stirling, and by Ruaraidh Flyn from Dualchas Architects, who will discuss Half of 11, which is his own home on the Isle of Skye. So format as before, quick introduction, which is what's happening right now, to a 20-minute presentation, two of these, obviously, and then approximately 20 minutes of Q&A. So please put all your questions into the Q&A function, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen, or you can use the chat bar as well, but the Q&A function is probably better. I will collect all these together and I will ask them at the end. So just put them in from the get-go. You can start adding these in. If we don't get enough questions, I of course will likely to have a few of my own. And of course, this has been recorded, so everybody can enjoy this later and will be put onto the RIAS website. So each presentation we pair up projects, and last week we paired up two projects in St Andrews. They naturally had a common context, so that made them kind of an obvious kind of pairing. This is not perhaps that's the most obvious pairing that we have here, but in many respects, the most interesting, I think. This is actually our largest and our smallest projects, award winners this year. And they are in quite different contexts. One's part of a long-standing historic strategic plan, and the other is a very natural, beautiful setting on the Isle of Skye, and quite different clients as well. So it will lead to a really fascinating and interesting discussion. So chuck those questions in. Now, first up will be Cristobal, and she will talk about the Campus Central University of Stirling, which I visited recently and as part of the Stirling Society of Architects judging, which is absolutely fabulous building, loved it. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to pass you over to Anna, who will tell you all about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And I'm going to share my screen, if I can, in a minute. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking to you about Campus Central, which is a project that we did for the University of Stirling. It's a very big project, as Chris was talking about. We have 3,000 square meters of new build and 3,000 of refurbishment. All the pictures that you would see of the building mostly display this part, which is quite a small part of the extension, which is 1,000 square meters each. But it's a really interesting process because the third part of the project was to actually reconfigure the court where the Campus Central building sits, which used to be roundabout, a glorified roundabout. So I think I'd like to talk about this as the context of the project being as part of our philosophy for reuse practice. And what do we mean by reuse? That our 40 years of practice, we've done 70% of our projects have been reuse or reinvention of existing buildings or sites. And we take that with great pride and actually with a lot of enthusiasm because we love doing these kind of things. The other thing I wanted to do is to talk about this process as part of our design philosophy principles that we apply through our work, and there's 7 of them, and I'll take you through them over the chat. Went so well yesterday in our practice, Maxine. Sorry. So the campus is set up in beautiful setting that it was, as Chris said, one of the initial universities that were campus-built. So it was designed by the current Ranjam before Robert Matthew and Johnson Marshalls, and it was a phase master plan from mid-60s until now, really. And it was set up within this incredible parkland of E3 Castle. Which was basically a woodland with a castle in the center and a man-made loch that was dug up in the 18th century or something like that. there is evidence of human presence in this area from obviously pretty early. So this is one of a Neolithic sandstone that is beside one of the beaches. And Stirling was one of the first holy universities built in Scotland since 1593. And it was one of our brand new universities that Ranjan delivered over the country. And the other ones were York, Bath, and Coleraine in Northern Ireland. And they were amazed by the campus setting because it was really beautiful. And what has always been quite interesting to us is how the campus developed around the law and the phase of doing it. In here, you can see they started with Bath building, which is here on the left-hand side, which was a temporary building that is still standing 60 years later. And then they completed the initial master plan in 1977. But we have been working with the university for around 10 years, first with a master plan refurbishment and kind of thinking about how the campus could grow and how could reorganize. And Campus Central is basically kind of a consequence of that master plan, because very early on, it was kind of one of the main issues we saw is that the traffic was impending in the campus. Now that is down to the fact that in the 60s everything was car oriented and traffic oriented, and one of the first things we organized around the master plan was to reroute the traffic and the vehicular accesses on the perimeter route that you can see there in pink to reactivate the pedestrian spaces around the loch, but also to create more space in the center, because the buses would have gone right through the middle of this, and that's what Campus Central is at the moment. So first thing the university had to do was to relocate a massive car park, which we were going to take over, because then we had to relocate the bus terminus, and only then we could do the pedestrianization in Queen's Court, which meant then that the buses will then go and stop in here. People will move through the center, and this bridge that is in the center, Queen's Court, will then be in the center. And the only traffic available around that area would have been the ones for servicing and emergency vehicles. As I said, that is a direct consequence of how the campus was designed in the 60s. Everybody drove. Nobody really placed a lot of attention to pedestrian. The campus is quite remote away from Stirling, so it made a lot of sense. But when we started working on this, it was basically, it looked like this. It was like a glorified roundabout. A really nice memorial to the Queen opening of the university in the center of the roundabout that nobody could access to. The advantage of that, though, is that these trees were there and they were very quite mature. So when we then were able to finish our 3 parts of the intervention, we then had the advantage of having amazing trees already inside. And Rachel Falcon Bowen, who have been working with us, landscape architects, for over 10 years and longer with the campus, were key players in actually designing those spaces, and to convert it into a place in which people can walk through, and it becomes like a nice outdoor room that the university could do and use for everyday things, and they've been using it a lot since they started. I think people is always quite an important part in our projects, and I'm going to show you a picture that is not particularly beautiful, but I suppose one of the things that the project was about enhancing the student life and the staff life in the campus. And it was about improving accessibility. And this is not a very pretty picture, but it actually talks about all our stakeholder engagement strategy and all the people and bodies that we had to talk to. And what it was really good about the university is that, you know, traditional clients would have perhaps just do the stakeholder engagement at the beginning. This was a real continuous engagement from stage 0 until post-completion. We're still engaging with them, and it shows in how the spaces work. Interestingly, when we were doing the original master plan for this, we worked with Nomad, and they were engaged in charge of actually the stakeholder engagement at that point. And we used this tool of getting people to draw their campus, and it was fascinating to see the things that they have missed. And they had missed the McRobert Theatre, which is at the center of the campus. So the project for the answer to this issue about not visibility and not crossing was this kind of new extension that opened up vistas and connecting, because this is a really highly populated campus. About 20,000 students go in and out every day along these bridges, and they needed a very high flexible space. What was interesting about and difficult at the same time of developing this is that it was a really big space. The whole plan that you see in there is about 4,000 square meters. And how do you organize a space that is mostly internalized, that is kind of along vistas, to make sure that it didn't feel like an airport a little bit, because they have shops and connecting everybody. So we work with the students and the stakeholders to almost sonify it and kind of give character to each of the areas and make sure that there was no difference between the refurbishment area to the new build space. And we communicated those spaces and how these things could imagine themselves when we were at early stages of design, by just using a lot of doodles and making people aware of how you could move through the space, because it's a really long floor plan at that level. And what it was very important to us was the communication, this idea of connecting and vistas. As I said, the engagement with the stakeholders continued all the way. We had to build this in, I don't know, something like 7 phases, organized in 3 major phases. We refurbished the atrium area here in the middle, while the library was still open and the shops were still open and McRoberts was still open. So the contractor had to carry out a lot of stakeholder engagement through all of it, particularly because then we hit COVID. And we had just handed over the refurbishment area, which is this building here, and then we started working on the extension, which was slightly easier, but we had to maintain access throughout. So keeping everybody aware of what was going on was key to the success of the delivery. The building narrative is an interesting one. It's about what people have in their minds about the project, and it's very interesting because Stirling has been at the heart of a lot of political movement during the 60s and the 70s. There was a lot of demonstrations. It's also been part of perhaps of the hidden conscience of people, because it was where Outlander was filmed, which I think is always quite fun. My mother loved it. But also the university has an amazing collection of art, and they displayed indoors and outdoors. And all these works by Dualchas and Jet Riley, they are subtly referencing all the work that we've been, because it's actually a really important collection that they have and they share it. And adaptive design is about obviously adapting our designs to the needs of the site and the client and of their users. I think what was interesting about this project originally is that they had built this around this open courtyard that you can see here. This block in there is the library. This tower in here is the tower for the McRoberts Theatre, and what you're seeing at the end is the buildings where the teaching happened. That cluster in the middle had always been designed as an area where the students will do their lives after classes. And this building here is a student services and student union. In the 90s, that central core was filled in, and there was a connection, an open connection between the courtyard and McRoberts Center, and that was all blocked. So you couldn't see anymore where you were going, and that was acknowledged as a problem, and as well as the fact that things weren't looking particularly nice at the time. But the path to get there was not straight, and it was really quite long. I think we finished our original master plan in 2010, and since then, and until we completed Campus Central, which was in 2021, we did around 6 or 7 proposals about how this could work. And it was a combination of trying to find out what the uses could be that could go in there, but also try to find what the vision for the university was, because it was clear that there was an issue. Well, it wasn't clear as how to solve it, and what else did they need the university to that we could complete. So we did a number of schemes. By the end, we settled in the one that is now being built on. And here, this is a demolition drawing, and you can see that it actually focuses on open up and get rid of the central spaces and everything that was blocking along the way, and to enhance the character of the space. And that is then gave us this really clear floor plate of 4,000 square meters to play with and to sonify, which was actually addressing all the problems that the university had at that particular level. It let us do nice toilets, because the ones that they had were from the 70s. It let us improve the quality of catering. It let us improve the quality of study space and supervise. and a place for gathering, really, which is what they were after in that level. The refurbishment area basically didn't do anything to the structure or the roof. It was mostly all services and resurfaces and making it beautiful. And we had to deal with a lot of different structures in there. And we use natural materials as a unifying theme to make sure that that everything looked okay, despite the fact that geometries were all really quite tricky and difficult and different with each other. And it was all about opening the vistas, as I said earlier. And recreating the spaces that the students had in the 70s where they were enclosed and giving them spaces to work together in whatever way they were. Environmental is an interesting one. When we started with this project, we didn't really have any environmental targets because it was 2010. And the university was keen on reduce their footprint, but there wasn't as a strong movement for recording that. We knew we couldn't go for BRIAM because it was a refurbishment mostly. But it's interesting because if we had done a 4,000 square meter building in U, we probably would have use significantly much more resources. So we reckon that by reusing what they had and improving the fabric and improving the services, we probably had saved about 77% of the embodied safe carbon. The building was looking like that in some places, so we had to work hard on insulating it and refurbishing it. But the reality is that the biggest change and impact on the extension could have been smaller, to save more carbon, but the impact would also have been smaller. And we had done it about seven iterations before to talk about that. Ultimately, I think the value of the extension is the role that it plays in improving the connectivity and making a good access to all the buildings that were quite modeled at the time. And economy and efficiency, I know it probably doesn't come across as a very efficient building because it's all triangles and things like that, but it actually responds to, the geometry responds to very pragmatic constraints in the site. We had a gigantic high pressure water main pipe running through the middle of what it was the site, because we had a bit of carte blanche on how to organize that. There was difference in levels, and so this pressure pipe, which was a hindrance in start, became actually the defining part of how much we could extend. We have an 8-meter exclusion zone that obviously we weren't gonna run over. We worked really hard to go through the register and the existing buildings. So luckily, the university has amazing records of what the original drawings are from Ranjam, and they're beautiful and they're really well documented. And actually, they built the things the way they say, which was quite happy. So we had to work quite hard with our engineers, structural engineers, because we were taking apart bits that had been put after the original concept, but also bits that had been put originally. And more importantly, we were tackling into the structure of the library, which actually set up our grid as well. So these are the pillars of the library at the moment. So we had to underpin and to create a space in the ground floor that would allow us access level to Macrover. It wasn't sorted before. And then it was building up from that. So our structure is lining with the existing structure of the library university and connecting to the skin of the library at different places at different levels, because the section of the library is not straightforward, as I'm going to show you in a minute. And what we had to do then, we cantilever down to maximize that footprint to give the university the best value for money, I suppose. So this is the section of the library in here. You see it's got an inverted ziggurat kind of form, and our building has to dance with it to use the spaces that we were left over underneath it, but also then to allow enough light into the upper floors of the library. And obviously try to make this junction as seamless as possible and as natural as possible. So you all know how difficult that is with a 60s building. Well, we work really close with Wilbur Hunter, not only in that, but in the rest of the project. And the solution is actually really nice because it makes this feel when you're inside of existing with new, and it kind of helps settling it. It's a bit like the trees in the courtyard. And then craft and beauty. I think there is a reason, a very pragmatic reason we had to use concrete in the structure. It was not just only about we love concrete and we wanted to look a little bit like the library building that was already there. But more importantly is we had a very strong high constraint in the lower level, and we couldn't afford to have any downstands. And the only structural system that we would have granted that was a flat slab that was tension. Therefore, we had to go for concrete everywhere else apart from the roof, which is a glue lamp. And because it was going to be left exposed, it was quite. We had to work really hard to get the right quality on it, and we did a lot of work in pre-construction with the contractor in terms of working on a good spec and benchmarking. And again, Ruaraidh Hunter were really invaluable on this. We took the client to see examples in buildings that we've done before. We had similar finishes. And then we had to use a number of interesting things to get, because we wanted to reduce as much as we could the carbon footprint here. We use a different variety to reduce the mix of the cement and the water content, and so we then went to use a special thing for them, which I don't know the name of, I'm sorry. But also we had locally sourced aggregated sand that reduced a little bit as much as we can. The other thing that was really quite important about this was the formwork. So we used rapido boat tubes for the columns, which we had used before, but it was really quite difficult to find a good concrete form that will allow us to have a clear and a good exposed thing. So we use port form, which is applied with this half density made for Douglas fir. But also what it was really amazing and really quite beautiful to see was the work that the subcontractor Caris did in setting up the formwork to give us these very subtle patterns. When you're in there, I remember when we got those drawings that I thought it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But actually I was wrong, because the most beautiful thing was the timber work that they did on site. It was incredible. I suppose we had to take quite a lot of care to get the concrete settling well. One we didn't follow because of program constraints was the fact that probably we should have casted it in the summer, not during the wetter times, but it happened. But also was about using stainless steel tying wires, specifying the rebar type, have a good vibration in it, and then the release agent was quite important. So we learned a lot about this, and the result was actually quite good, because nobody was really convinced that it was going to look clean enough. And I suppose the other crafty thing that was quite a challenge to achieve was the glue lamp beams and the CLT roof structure at the time that we have left exposed. We had to make them oversized, obviously, to accommodate the minimum charring depth that we had to have. But concealing the connections between the concrete columns onto the glue lamp beams, which actually required a lot of coordination and a lot of goodwill from the subcontractors. This was a design and build contract, and the subcontractors were so helpful, and the main contractor was so good at actually bringing the right people at the table at the time that actually the results are really quite good. We worked again really hard with Ruaraidh Hunter to develop this structure so that it could kind of deliver out and take advantage of these amazing views that we had to Stirling Monument, and of course to accommodate our stair that also worked as a big gigantic roof light to bring light to the ground floor, because that was quite dark. Half of the facade is underground. So we had to do a lot of work on the edges of the concrete and the edges of the roof. But the result is actually quite amazing. And it is full of light, and it is giving the client what they wanted, which was a big, gigantic living room for all the students in different categories, and a space that is inspired and somehow bring the light and the nature in without being overly in. Suppose we have asked the question to our clients about retrofit and what they're doing, and I was telling the story earlier about perhaps it wasn't the most of the easiest projects to build. It was quite complex. There was a lot of things that we found on the side that we weren't sure, but the reality is we have to be reusing buildings, because in 2050 the buildings are already here, so we can't rebuild them all, and I think we just need to find ways to make them more energy efficient. And that's me. Thank you very much, Chris.
All right, thanks very much, Anna. That was fantastic. I'm just really love this idea of buildings dancing with each other, because, and having been there, I know exactly what you mean. It seems like some kind of a slow dance, almost the way they kind of like interlock or whatever, but absolutely brilliant. I really enjoyed my trip to there. Now, next up we have Ruaraidh Flyn, who's going to talk about something, as I say, quite different. So I'm not going to dwell on it, but I did meet Ruaraidh at the recent RIAS Awards in Edinburgh, and fantastic that 11 won the Wood for Good special award. So I'm now going to hand you over to Ruaraidh, who will tell you all about his building, or should I say his family's building.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Anna, for that great talk previously. So I'll share this. Okay, I hope everybody can see that okay. Yeah, so this is in contrast to Anna's talk, which is a refurbishment of a building for a large client group, the university. Ours is a very personal project and a much smaller project. It's for our own family house. It's very much in the continuity of the work of Dualchas, but it's also a very personal project to us. Yeah, I'm Ruaraidh Flyn. I'm a director at Dualchas. I've been with Dualchas and on Skye for the last 12 years. I'm originally from the Highlands. My family was from Skye. But when we moved here 12 years ago, there were no members of the family left on Skye, but there was a piece of land. So we moved principally for work, to be able to work with Dualchas, to work in this fantastic Hebridean environment, and work on projects throughout the Highlands and Islands. You know that Dualchas is, has a good reputation for doing modern architecture that responds specifically to the Highlands and Islands. And we have an approach, a well-established approach of reading the landscape and knowing when to work with and against the grain. I really wanted to be part of that and to work in landscapes that I was familiar with, using some of the skills that I'd learned in my years working in the cities. But we arrived in Skye and discovered that there was still a family croft in the family. My uncle had it. He lived in London, and he assigned it to us to allow us the opportunity to build. And there are few opportunities to get land. It's very difficult to purchase land outright on Skye. There are a few plots that come up. Most of the land is still owned by large estates, and only small pockets come up every now and then. But the opportunity to take the old family croft, the croft where my grandfather was born and had been in the family for a number of generations, but due to population decline, it's a common story that people leave the islands and don't always come back, but still have a very strong tie. I think that was something in our family also that was common to many others. My uncle had the croft and lived in London for 40 years. So when we returned, it was a chance to unburden himself of that and give us the opportunity to build something. So 11 is the name of the croft. Crofts were split at some time during the clearances. So originally there would have been a croft 11 when other villages were cleared and put into other townships. crofts were forcibly split, and that's why this is half of 11, as are all the crofts in Upper Breckish and Lower Breckish are all split into separate portions from their original. So that it's a original 4 acres of croft, now 3 acres, due to other houses that have been built on it. But it is a beautiful low-lying piece of croft land. Skye is mostly known for the mountainous areas in the middle and for the rugged coastline, but this sits in Broadford Bay. So that, yeah, this is the view of the croft, the very low-lying landscape that we're talking about. This is the croft land that we took on, and the original house in the background. This is the view out over the inner sound, and then this is the location. Yeah, so this is Broadford Bay with the various islands of Ruaraidh and Scalpay and Pabay out between Skye and Wester Ross. This is a closer view of Broadford Bay, and then this is the location of the croft within that, with the airstrip at Ashig and the beautiful beach at Ashig just below that, and the house sitting on the middle road, Comity Road of Breckish, with the view out over the Upper Sound to the north. So this is the croft, just to give you some context. The croft runs across the main road. This is the main road from Skye, about 5 miles from the Skye Bridge. So it's separated, all the crofts in the Upper Breckish are separated by the main road, which has grown over time. This would have been the original shape of the croft, would have been rectangular, and these other pieces have been cut out of it. So it is essentially one larger piece to the north of the main road and a smaller field to the south. But this is where we're going to build the house. The open piece of land that you saw the photographs of has a very large flat piece of, it was gently sloping piece of land which runs down to the north, and with an area behind which is a bit more rocky, and this is an area that we planted up with trees. It's wet and rocky as well. So we've taken on that part of the land to plant trees on, and we're going to work this piece of the land on the other side. So this is a section through the whole croft, the Comity Road to the left, the north, and it slopes up gently to a high point, and drops down to a burn which drains the rear part of the croft. And you can see the scale of an existing neighbouring building to the side there. And then below is just the zoomed in area of where we wanted to build. We wanted to build, many of the houses along this road, modern houses that have been built, sit close to the road, or in the middle of that field site, which we thought took away from the character of the crofts. It turns them into gardens. So you drive along and it's almost like a set of houses, suburban houses in garden, and not really part of the crofting landscape. So what we wanted to do is keep a large area of field to the front of the house and build quite high up the croft. So we keep that area of field open and live at the higher point. But of course, there's houses behind, and we wanted to keep the original view, the view from the original houses out over the top. So we wanted the house to be low-lying, and really the goal was to be the height of the house to be as low as the ridge of this house, but on a higher piece of ground. So what we were really responding to, our initial response was to build low in the landscape, a long flat house, high up the site, to have the double aspect of the view out over the view to the north, but to form a sunny space to the south, to be able to sit out during the day. So what we wanted was a double aspect living area that would have the views, but also access out to the south and the sun during the day in a sheltered courtyard. So what we did was bring the driveway up the side, which splits the croft into two parts, but a long, low house along the front, which conceals the cars to the rear, and then another wing here, which forms a barrier between the parking courtyard and the living courtyard, and it also contains some other functions. So mainly in the front piece, we have a double aspect living area and the main bedrooms, and then in that smaller block at the back, we have a bedroom and a guest bedroom and a utility area and an entrance area. So this is a section showing how low the building sits in the land. In fact, that some of the spoil from the site here was used to form an exaggeration of this bank, which continues right along the length of the whole Crofting Township. So it does sit very low, and actually from the main road, it's virtually invisible now, as that's grown up. But this shows a section through the double aspect living area with a view to the north and access to the sun at the back. And then this is the plan. So one thing that we really wanted to do, or we really had to do, was make an affordable house for us. It had to come within the budget that was available to us. We had to limit the area of it. That was the main thing. We were also receiving a Crofting House grant, which is a grant that's available from the Scottish Government to allow people to take on crofts and build a house on the croft, and to encourage people to live as permanent residents on crofts. But that had a maximum area that could be funded of 164 square meters. So we couldn't build a house that was any bigger than that. So that was a limiting factor, but actually, really encouraged us to work very hard at the plan to see, what was necessary, what functions could double, how we could make a 4-bedroom house that was functional for us, but was limited to 162 square meters. So this plan was the end of a long design evolution, mostly carried out in the evenings at home with my wife Claire, and we got to a point where we managed to fit everything we wanted to fit in within the allowable area, and still created the spaces that we wanted to externally. So you can see that this is the main entrance here. These 2 blocks are separated, and then the main living area, which has a kitchen, dining, living, and home office in the one space, but separated by 3 dresser units and the windows to the north and to the south. But we also wanted to have a deep elevation, something that allowed us to sit out in the evenings or in bad weather outside. The inside-outside relationship was really key for what we wanted to do. We wanted the building to sit very quietly in the land, but also allow us to get in and outside as much as possible. So we wanted a deep recess. Then we have some storage built into the end here, but we have a deep recess at the back here. And then this is part of a line of storage internally. Because this was going to be a flat roof building, there is no attic space. So all the storage has to be within this 162 square meters. So There's a lot of storage in the hallway here. There's 2 bathrooms that serve 3 bedrooms at the front, and a window seat here, which allows some morning light to come in, and it's a really lovely space to sit in the morning. Then a very functional back of house, which has the air source heat pump and bins and a recess at the back, so out of sight, but close at hand. A guest bedroom, 4th bedroom at the back, and a utility and plant area, and a bench and jackets area, which is just off to the entrance there. So this results in some very simple facades, which have a depth to them at the front, which creates a bit of interest. We continued a hit and miss screen over that front entrance, over that front recessed area. All the windows are floor to ceiling. You know, all the bedrooms have a door out to them. And then, yeah, a very simple glazing system at the rear, which was also very budget conscious. And then this section, which shows the glazing going out to the front and to the rear, and the height of the dresser unit that responds to that. And then this is a construction section. So there was just, it was an entirely timber frame construction building, rather other than a pair of steel goalposts, which frame those 2 large openings, which are 7.2 meters wide. Other than that, it's an entirely timber frame building. That was partly to give us an exposed structure inside, to be able to express that structure and to use that structure to you know, mitigate sound in a large open plan space, and also to bring some texture to the ceiling, and just to expose that structure to allow you to understand how this building is built. And it was also kept very low to allow us to self-build. What we did was we got a main contractor to do the groundworks, the access road, the groundworks, and the bring it to wind and watertight, and then we took on everything from there on. So it was a self-build project from wind and watertight stage. We did all of the cladding, we did the full fit out. Family and friends helped us with so many elements of it. It took us 18 months to do, but it was really something that consumed the whole family for those 18 months. But it was an economical way to do it. So as well as the area limitation, there was also the budget limitation. We really had to take on a lot of the work ourselves to be able to do this. So yeah, breaking ground for the first time was a very exciting moment, forming the access road. Kids put up with a lot over this period of time, but it was something I think very valuable for them to experience. The story of building their own home, and they were very patient with the many, many evenings and weekends that we spent up at the site. We lived 15 miles away at the time. Yeah, building yourself also allows you to appreciate, you know, so many moments of change during the construction, and it is a very rich learning experience. This was the day after the concrete slab was poured. We arrived to find that deer had been in the night, and these deer footprints are still there underneath the insulation somewhere within the building. And it was just great to be able to see a smooth piece of concrete one day, and then how the landscape had begun to take its to make its mark on it. And then, yeah, it was a lengthy process doing the cladding. some colleagues, friends, family helped with that. There were so many pieces of timber. We used a very narrow Siberian larch board to clad. Yeah, we finished just as lockdown was about to start. We managed to get finished just in time and moved in a couple of weeks after lockdown started. So we were lucky that we had all the materials in place and the vast majority of it built then. And yeah, this was the view of the first evening in the new house, which was a beautiful spring sunset, which shows the view up the inner sound over to Ruaraidh and Duncan in the centre of the photograph. So yeah, these are some of the images that David Barber has taken of the building. This is one that I really love. It's just the evening moving in and just shows a hint of some of the original buildings in the background, and captures also the meadow, the field that we managed to retain in the front of the house, which goes through, you know, evolves over the seasons. At the moment, there's lots of pink and white orchids in there, but it dies away in the winter also. So it's great to be able to experience that. And then this is the view through the courtyard at the rear, which is a bit more mature now, but this shows the view up the inner sound to Ruaraidh and Pabe and Scalpe, all the small islands between Skye and the mainland. And that recessed terrace at the front, which allows storage at the side and a bit of a sitting out area in shelter. And some of the details of the cladding that we managed to achieve, just very simply with single length boards, with just a cut to each board. There were so many of them to do and so many screws to fit, but it was a beautiful material to work with, hardly a knot in it. And then, yeah, this is it in the summer as the flowers begin to appear in the meadow. The entrance area where we continued the cladding into the building to form a gap between the two timber blocks. And then some nice moments of a roof light in the heart of the building, which provides light at one end of the corridor space. And then into the kitchen dining area, where you first get that view out to Ben Nicaliach, which is to the northwest. You can see the separation of the spaces by the dresser units and the texture of the ceiling. And it's a busy family house. The units are very simple and adaptable, and you know, life changes and life can be displayed. You know, never a week goes by where the same objects are in the same niches. Everything moves and changes, and it's been quite nice to have all of that on display. And then there's a home working space around to the side, which of course, just going into lockdown became very useful. And I don't think we'd quite imagined that we'd be doing working and homeschooling from that as soon as we did, but it was very useful, and it is actually nice to be in the same space, but just tucked around the corner. And it's the only window that doesn't go down to the floor, which allows you to have that view out the gable. And then a view of the window seats, and the very simple oiling that we did to the beams, and the roof light that comes in the heart of the house at the entrance. And we've got 3 very simple bedrooms along the front, and a couple of shower rooms off the hall, a light one and a dark one, and a small spare bedroom out to the back. And so, yeah, this is probably an image that we're most kind of proud of, because what we really set out to do was create a modern building that sat well in the landscape, that was over time going to really become part of the land. Trees were beginning to grow up around it, and the grasses will merge with it as it ages, and allows the original house behind to look over the top, and hopefully it will be quite harmonious with the landscape over time. And the house is also one that features in the Dualchas exhibition that we've made in Venice this year. So if anybody is looking to visit Venice this year, we've picked 5 projects which really tell the story of Dualchas and how we work in the landscapes, and some very personal stories in there derived from some of the houses we've built for ourselves as well. So yeah, thanks.
No, thank you, Rory. That was mesmerizing. And sit and look at some of these photographs all afternoon. But one quick technical question for you, Rory, is like, what was the glazing manufacturer supplier you used? Got that on in the chat bar.
Right.
Who was it?
Oh, it was Rational.
Rational, right? Okay.
Rational, yeah. So it was a timber frame, aluminium clad, triple glazed, simple domestic system.
Fantastic. I'm completely intrigued by the clients for these jobs, and I've got, that's probably my main kind of question is, and I know from speaking to yourself, Anna, that and I didn't realize there was 7 phases, but Colin, I think, who was your direct client, was very reticent about the project at the start, but now, having been shown around a bit, he absolutely loves it. And the same with yourself, Rory. I know you had to work so closely with your family. So, I mean, what has been the reaction to each of these? So, Anna, you give us yours first. I mean, Colin loves it. And has there been any post-occupancy evaluation with students and things? Is that just a bit too early for that? I don't know POE in your family, Rory, but we'll find out in a minute.
So we're on it at the moment because the delivery of the first phase, which was the refurbishment, was completed 3 years ago. We used some of the feedback that we got from the students then, and when it had been like occupied maybe for about a year, and it hadn't been occupied like a full capacity because obviously COVID was there. But when they came back, we used some of the feedback that they got from that original refurbishment, or the initial refurbishment, to inform particularly materials and soft furniture in the main extension. And also it really had a lot of influence on how the top floor was laid in and the amount of rooms that we had in there and was working. But at the moment, the ground floor of the extension is occupied by student services and the entrance to McRobert. And we are well, I've just finished the POE for that area, and we're gonna tackle some changes to that. But in general, the feedback from the students has been amazing. I was going to show you a video, but I thought we run out of time, so because I've spoken for too long. But one of the things that the chair of the project said in his interview with him is that the thing that he loves the most about the project is he feels that it was always there. And the moment they took the barriers down, the students just occupied the space. In an hour, it was full. So it's because they had taken, the facing thing was an interesting thing. They had done a gradual reveal, and people was walking through the last bits. So eventually they were all looking forward to see what's going on. So the moment they took the barriers down, everybody was in, and nobody could fit a space. So yeah, it's amazing to see it busy.
Yeah. What about you, Rory? What's the feedback been from your family and all those friends that helped you build it?
Yeah. No, it's good. We've had so many people come to stay. It's the first time we've had a house with a spare bedroom. So we've been able to have many people come and stay. It's interesting looking at those photos, the professional photos there, because, you know, life moves on and it fills up with things, and the house softens. You know, there's a lot more furniture and materials, things on the walls in there. So yeah, it's good. I don't think there's too much we would change from doing it. I mean, maybe my wife has a different take on it, my kids. But you know, it's a good piece of infrastructure for life. You know, there's lots of other things. You know, there'll be things added and taken away in terms of soft stuff over the years. But I think all the hard stuff that we built works.
I like the idea that people keep moving things around and putting them in the different shelves and stuff like that. I'm sure the photographs we're seeing were very neat and tidy. Maybe it's not always as neat and tidy as that, but it looks amazing. I know that we weren't going to ask too many technical questions, Anna, but I did notice that there's a question that's come in, and it's from Ian Parsons, is asking, did you consider putting solar panels on the roof, Ian? And I'm also wondering yourself, Anna, is there a lot of renewables built into your project? I mean, what people first, Anna?
We didn't have solar panels on the roof of the extension or anywhere else because it's overlooked by the library. So we had to work really hard to actually make a roof that looked beautiful from the library as well, but also is in the wrong orientation, and it wouldn't have given us enough space anyway. I know the university is looking at how to get some more renewables in campus. What we didn't have renewables per se. What we used, because at that time we still could do it, was the ventilation strategy and the heating strategy for the two parts of the building are slightly different. The refurbishment one, we just enhanced what they had there and made the machinery more efficient. The new extension one is a mixed hybrid mode of ventilation. There's a very slow, we have machines in the roof and in the basement, and it's a very slow push of air that goes through it, and it gets and it's winter. In winter it's always closed. In the summer, students and staff can open the louvers that we have, so that it doesn't have any aircon. It's just heating that it has. The glazing, the setup of the building itself, because the third floor cantilevers out, and that's where the southwest is. It creates quite a lot of shadow onto the buildings on the other levels, and that works quite well as a protection for heat. So again, the glass is obviously it's double glazing, and it's got all sorts of solar glazing, and I don't know the name of it. But yeah, we didn't have a lot of renewables. The university has a massive CHP system. This is what we linked into. And they are trying to make that green in themselves. That's a different project that they're running at the moment as part of the more efficient way of running the state, which is taking everybody now. It's priority number one in all the universities we're working with. This is about how do you run a more efficient state, and it's about dressing the buildings well, insulating them well, closing them well, and then so that you can reduce the energy that you consume.
No, having been there, I really can see how you've modeled that facade onto the new kind of plaza space, and how the overshadowing works really well. Mm-hmm. What about yourself, Rory? Did you think about putting PV on your roof? I asked that because that's Ian's directed that one at you.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we have it can be fitted in future. We were really limited on our budget. We made decisions all the way along, which allowed us to manage the budget. As prices rose, things changed, but we tried to keep all of the key things in place. But we haven't put PV in. We may put it in future. We have a duct out into the landscape where we can do that. But we use an air source heat pump. We didn't use an MVHR system. It was going to be expensive, and we have we use a number of decentralized units to provide fresh air and to extract. So the air tightness had to be carefully managed to make sure there wasn't we didn't have to put in the MVHR. So that was the most sort of delicate kind of managing. But yeah, because we were involved in the building and we could get the air tightness tester to come back a number of times, so we could just achieve exactly what we wanted to. That was possible.
Right, we've got one more question, and I'll put it to each of you slightly differently. The first one to you, Rory. I mean, the questions come from Aidan. It's just saying, did you use your house as a testing ground for ideas, for new ideas, or was it a kind of culmination of everything that worked in the past?
Yeah, a bit of both. Yeah, you take ideas that you've used over the time, or things that you've put on the shelf. I think, you know, like designing with my wife, I think what we came up with in the end was a very evolved design. It was probably option 13C. we spent so much time making different designs and layouts for the site that we think we got to the optimal point. So yeah, we used some ideas, and using the exposed concrete polished screed, it's actually just a construction screed. It's not a highly finished screed. It was polished well, but it isn't a expensive solution. We needed to use a screed anyway for the underfloor heating, so we just used one pour and a polish of that. So that was something that we'd used maybe on one project before, but we're using on quite a few other projects at the moment with different aggregate mixes.
And the same question to you, Anna. I kind of, it's for me, it was very much a Page and Park building when we went to visit it, and the one bit that kind of really struck me was the stair. I mean, I think Page and Park do some amazing stairs, and I could see that in there. So did you pull from all your expertise from all your other amazing projects that you do and bring some of that into your project?
Of course. I think the reason we do good stairs is because they're not just stairs, and we try to make them beautiful, but in all the public buildings where we have an opportunity to increase vertical cross visual connection, the stairs are very important for that. And we've done a lot of essays on how do you bring people together vertically. Theatre Royal is a really good example for that, and that's a really complex geometrical operatic stair because of where it is an opera building. Therefore, we could be a bit more flamboyant. This one had another big functional reason to be, and it's the fact that the triangular new site that we were using is quite dark in the middle of it, and because we only have in effect one facade. And the center part of it, it's actually quite deep. It's maybe 30 meters. So we really needed that stair for two reasons. One, to be able to see where you were going. This was a counter fact of what the original status of that building was. You couldn't see where you were going. There were two stairs, one going up, one going down. It was kind of very convoluted circulation. So there was a very clear desire from our clients to be able to see where they were going and to make the circulation clear. And that was, nothing does it better than a nice, beautiful open stair, right? You want to go up. But also it was this thing about bringing light down, which is why in floor plan, the stair is a diamond. It's like two equilateral triangles facing each other. The cut of the stair is that, but the stair only occupies like a third of that space in the way this is. So it means we always have like a really big roof light going down onto the ground floor that brings all the light through. We had to fight really hard actually to get the stair open, and that was to do with fire regulations, but we were really lucky. Our fire engineers were brilliant, and we were able to argue that we had. And it was also quite an effort in terms of the staff and the stakeholders, because the stairs are open, there is no sense of possession of the space, or it's all about creating this big arrival space. And some people in our client base would have liked a little bit more of closure, but because it had to function as this chimney of light almost, it just declined like that. But thank you for saying we do nice stairs. I'll pass that on.
You definitely do. And we're now, as usual, we're running over a little bit, so I'm going to have to bring things to a conclusion. But I think thank you so much, Anna and Rory. They were just wonderful. And I think, as I say, the two projects are completely the best of bedfellows, I think, because and I think what brings them together is the care, and just the care and that you both and all your colleagues have given to, and in your case, your family, Rory, have given to your projects is what makes them perfect bedfellows. So thank you so much for your two wonderful talks. I'd just like to say that we have the next detailed discussion we'll have will be in the start of August, and that will be between Papal Steading in East Lothian by Cameron Webster Architects with Ian Parsons architect, together with Cuddy Moss North Ayrshire by the Anne Nisbet Studios. So that will be in early August. So please watch out for your bulletins and the post to see when that will be. But today it's all about these two fabulous buildings, and thank you so much, Rory and Anna. So we can't really do a round of applause, but I can. So thank you again.
Thank you very much.
They were brilliant. So so that's us. So cheerio, everybody, and I'll say adios.
Adios.
Adios. And I don't know what Gaelic for cheerio is. Rory, you have to tell us. Okay. So adios, everybody, and see you in early August.